Behold, the best, worst 3DS of all time! I hate to admit that I like this system, because I don't. But before we get into this one, let's talk special edition retro-themed systems. Because Nintendo apparently does a lot of these, or so you may think, because, you know, I always think like, oh man, Nintendo sure does milk a lot of their nostalgic systems. But in reality, they only do a couple of these every now and then. The most notorious one is definitely the GBA SP. This was kind of the one to kick it all off. And this design is absolutely gorgeous, even if you aren't into the whole retro aesthetic. It's just a cool looking system. And I think it's just brilliant how the outside has the kind of ridges like an NES system, and then the inside is the controller. And I think what really seals the deal here is the fact that it's textured just like an NES controller, kind of that rough, not sandpaper, but it kind of looks like it kind of texture. They went above and beyond, and I think this is one of their best retro-themed systems because of it. But in Japan, they had their own variant, which is based on the Famicom. Another really cool one. This one isn't nearly as much as the NES edition over here in North America, mainly because this is literally just themed around the original Famicom color scheme, and it's literally just, you know, burgundy and kind of a I don't know, an eggshellish white, and that's pretty much it. The inside is kind of, you know, the Game Boy Advance logo is a little golden. That's kind of cool, but overall, it's a good looking system, very cool. But the NES system is definitely a little bit cooler. Interestingly, though, the inside of the system wasn't themed around the Famicom controller, but the Game Boy Micro Special Edition Famicom Edition was. This was strangely released in Japan and North America. I find that weird just because, you know, North America is just like, you know, what do we know about this? But I think it was released mainly because it looks outstanding. This is one of my favorite looking system designs of all time. It's of course themed after the first player Famicom controller with the one right there. I think there was actually also a variant, or at least a custom faceplate you could have bought that had the second player insignia on it. I'm not actually sure if that was a fan-made thing or an officially released Nintendo thing, because one of the main things about the Game Boy Micro is being able to take the faceplate off and swap it out. So I think that might have been a Nintendo officially released thing, or if it wasn't, then a fan did it. But either way, this is absolutely gorgeous. It's gold and it looks just like the original Famicom controller. This one is the Japanese model, but it doesn't matter because the Game Boy Advance is region-free. So, yeah. But yeah, I find it very interesting how the NES edition of the Game Boy Advance SP is the controller and the NES system design mixed in one, whereas the Famicom gets a Game Boy Advance SP that's themed around the system and a Game Boy Micro themed around the controller. So combining the two, it kind of matches. And then we didn't really get anything for a while until this one, and then after that, we got a Super Nintendo design finally. We never really got a Super Nintendo-esque design for handhelds or any system in terms of like, oh, retro system design. This one got a Super Famicom variant in Japan, and of course a European variant because the European the Super Nintendo looks different in all regions. And we finally got this in, I believe, 2017. And this is my favorite of the new 3DS XLs. This is a new 3DS XL, so, you know, it has the C-Stick and the extra shoulder buttons and the face tracking 3D, all of that. This is my favorite new 3DS XL, mainly because for some reason they decided to not have a glossy finish on the outside. So, that's a win in my book. But before the new 3DS XL, we got this hunk of trash. This is the Retro NES Edition 3DS XL. I love this thing, and I hate it at the same time. And I hope you can understand why based on this design. I think this is one of the laziest, dumbest looking 3DS designs of all time. However, the box is amazing. The box is designed just like an original NES system. You even have AV outputs on the side here, exactly where they would usually be on an original NES. It's absolutely fantastic. I think this looks fantastic. The system itself bleh. And even the inside, and this of course goes along with what I really like about this box. Even they have like a little NES cartridge sleeve on the back. That's really cool. But even the inside of the system, it's just a gray system with red buttons, and that's it. Pretty much. I mean, the D-pad's black, but even then, like, the inside doesn't look like an original NES controller. But here's my problem, okay? They could have done something very similar to the GBASP, and maybe that's why they didn't do it. Maybe they wanted to do something a little different. Maybe they wanted to do something to kind of set this 3DS XL apart from the GBASP design. So they just said, well, let's just put a decal of the NES controller on the front. It just looks dumb. It just looks stupid. Like, it's just like, it makes perfect sense because, I mean, you do it with the GBASP, you have the ridges right there. I mean, that's perfect. But the 3DS XL is even more shaped like an NES, like in terms of dimensions and whatnot. So it would make perfect sense to put the ridges there, and on the inside, do the same thing as the GBASP, you know, have the bottom look like an NES controller. Instead, they do whatever the hell this is. But much like anybody who plays Nintendo games, I'm a fucking sucker. So I've always kind of wanted this, even though I think the design is dumb. I'm a sucker, and I wanted this. So I found a copy on eBay. This is brand new. This has never been opened. I'm an idiot, but I've always kind of wanted this one. And 3DS XLs, the original 3DS XLs, I think have some of the coolest special edition system designs. Mainly because of one system. Boom. The Zelda edition of the 3DS XL. I think this is absolutely gorgeous, one of Nintendo's best systems. And it's not like it's like a, wow, incredibly intricate design. It's literally just a Triforce and it's golden, but they went all in with it. Like, I'm like, if you're gonna do a bold design like this, go all in, and they definitely did. And this is like my favorite special edition 3DS system design, pretty much special edition Nintendo system design of all time. You know, it looks beautiful. It is absolutely gorgeous, and I finally got this. This has been my most wanted 3DS special edition. And it just kind of goes along with the idea, in my opinion, that the original 3DS XL has some of the coolest looking special editions. And I guess this is a part of the list. Well, this was released in 2014. I believe this came out around October of 2014. And this was kind of to coincide with the release of Ultimate NES Remix on the 3DS, which actually came out in December. I love this version. This is probably my preferred way to play NES Remix, mainly because this just works perfectly on a 3DS, and it's pretty much a combination of NES Remix 1 and 2 on the Wii U, however, missing a couple games. You know, it's pretty much like a best-of compilation of NES Remix 1 and 2, which makes it better. You know, it's kind of like, it kind of weeds out a lot of the duds, and it kind of just gives you a best-of experience. And it works great on the 3DS. It works perfectly on a portable system. NES Remix is a game that many people thought, like, well, this is the perfect idea for a portable system. And they actually asked Nintendo developers, like, why is this on Wii U? Why isn't this on 3DS? And the developers responded with, well, you know, like, we wanted to really take advantage of the power of the Wii U. And, you know, while these are just NES games, you know, we wanted to take advantage of the power of the Wii U with all the remix challenges because we wanted to do some crazy things with it. 1 year later, this came out on 3DS. Nintendo doesn't lie. We're just stupid enough to think they tell the truth. Well, I've wanted to see what this system is like in person for years now. I mean, when this was announced, it was one of those initial feelings as a Nintendo fan. You just kind of feel like, oh boy! And then you kind of think about it, and then you're like, that looks like garbage. I just think it looks dumb, you know? Like, I just feel like there was no real thought put into it. It's literally just an NES controller design popped on here, and that's it. And, like, I just feel like it feels really lazy and dumb and anticlimactic. And it's just like, you could have done a lot of cool retro designs with it. The SNES design of the new 3DS XL looks great. This looks pathetic. It looks like something you get at Hot Topic. It's been long enough. I gotta check it out, but at least the packaging kind of continues with the cool tradition. The flap says, now you're playing with power. That's fun. And then even more flaps, you have Mario sprites on the inside. That's a nice little touch. But the moment of truth. I really have to see what this thing looks like. The usual stuff you'd get with a 3DS XL around the time. You have the Club Nintendo stuff. I miss Club Nintendo. I mean, it wasn't that great when we had it, but, you know, I loved I love that we had the option to have it. My Nintendo has been doing a lot of stuff more recently where it's just like, they do offer prizes, but I just think the way it works is just weird. Like, it's just like, you don't get those prizes with the gold points, because gold points are what you get for spending money on games. You get those prizes by doing, like, menial tasks, like signing up for newsletters and logging into Nintendo mobile apps. I don't get it. Like, wouldn't it make more sense to have that stuff purchasable with the gold coins if I buy a lot of Nintendo stuff? But well, you know, I've given up on my Nintendo long ago. But you get the AR cards. This is when they were kind of cheaping out. You know, the 3DS XL was definitely better than the original 3DS, but it definitely felt cheaper. That's kind of my main thing with it. And one case of that is the fact that the AR cards just came in a plastic sack. In the original 3DS, they had a little card holder, which was nice. But, you know, that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about this thing right here. Let's see if I can open this up in a decent way. A little charger block. Oh man, this is intense. Okay, so in person it has a bit more of like a metallic sheen than the box would kind of make you think. I still think the design is kind of dumb. It's just having just an NES controller right here. But on the inside, it looks pretty nice. It looks pretty nice on the inside. I'll give them that. I just do think the controller design is it just looks tacky. It just looks tacky looking, personally. You know, and of course, you know, I would have preferred like the ridges, and maybe even like, you know, like, oh man, you know, the NES flap would be here, or, yeah, you know, I think that would be asking a bit much because there's not a lot of room to make that design work. But, you know, I think the ridges would have just worked a lot better, though. I understand, you know, the controller is definitely more iconic, but at that point, it makes it feel like one of those NES t-shirts that everybody wears, where it's just like, oh, come on, man. I don't want to be that guy. But the inside, everything looks pretty solid. The outside, I just think this design is just really lazy. But overall, you know, it does look better in person. Not by much, though. However, where does it rank in terms of the other retro systems? It's at the bottom. 100%. It's at the bottom. Overall, I think the original Game Boy Advance SP NES Edition reigns supreme. Obviously, the texture, the outside, it's just the fact, outside NES system, inside NES controller, it's perfect. You follow that up with the Famicom controller design Game Boy Micro. Why isn't this, like, at the very top? I don't know. I think just the fact that, you know, it's so shiny and stuff, it just makes me feel like, you know, I feel like, I just don't feel comfortable playing it all the time because I want it to be all pretty, all, like, for eternity. And I feel like the more I play it, it's not going to look like that. The NES controller design of the Game Boy Advance SP, I feel like I can beat the shit out of this. I think third can go to the Super Nintendo New 3DS XL. You know, I just feel like the Super Nintendo doesn't lean itself as much into the whole like retro design aesthetic. I don't know, you know, it's just a little more complex. I think the original NES does lean itself into this more often, which doesn't mean I want nothing but NES retro designs of things, you know, far from it. I'd love more systems to be represented, you know, N64, GameCube, even like original Game Boy or Game Boy Color. I think that would have been awesome to see 3DS, DS, Game Boy Advance versions of, but you know, I just feel like the Super Nintendo doesn't, the design of it doesn't lean itself into the whole, like, oh man, make a, you know, new system design based off of that. You know, I think the NES works a lot better in those regards, but it's still it's still a solid special edition system. Follow that up with the Famicom Game Boy Advance SP. You know, great looking system on its own. Very cool combination of colors, though. I just don't think it's as nearly as cool as like how these three are designed. And then the Retro NES Edition 3DS XL. That's what it's called. It's called Retro NES Edition. What would a modern NES Edition look like? Yeah, in person, it looks okay, you know, like, and I'm not, you know, I'm obviously hyperbolizing it a bit. You know, it's a fine looking system, but I do think it's the laziest of all of these, even though this one is literally just a color, is just color coded. I just feel like this one wasn't really well thought out. It was literally like, just put the NES controller on here. And you know what's really annoying about the 3DS XL, or just 3DS Special Editions in general? They're always like designed in this way, where the design is facing like this direction. When you're playing it, when other people see you play it, you know, it's gonna be upside down. So it's just like when people see you play it like this, like it's gonna look dumb as hell. It's gonna look even dumber. Like the only time that it ever like the design works is when like it's closed, which, you know, I don't know. I mean, there must be a reason for it, because all 3DS designs are positioned like this. So I'm not sure, but the inside looks cool. It's easily still a cool 3DS. You know, I'm not gonna tell you not to get it. You know, I'm no barbarian. But in terms of my opinion, I feel like this is one of their lazier special edition system designs. I'm still really happy to have it. I think it's inherently cool, but I hate myself for thinking that it's cool. You know, owning a system like this makes me feel like I should be wearing an NES t-shirt in band class, making everybody around me feel uncomfortable. But as a cool little novelty to own, it does the job. I just wish Nintendo would consider my feelings before they make dumb systems like this again. So Nintendo, for your next special edition, do a Switch Lite, but harken back to whatever the hell this thing is.